Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Culture Exchange Mini FESPACO de Vienna 2021. My name is Irène Hochauer-Kpoda. I am event manager at the Vienna Institute for International Dialogue and Cooperation based in Vienna. Through the present event, Culture Exchange Mini FESPACO de Vienna, the VIDC and the festival Mini FESPACO de Vienna put the focus on the Sahel, which is facing a lot of challenges. Islamist terror is spreading in the Sahel, in countries like Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Chad, Mauretania, destroying human beings and culture. Also, the corona pandemic and climate change increase the pressure on the weak state structures in the region. As a result, the terror threat is increasing in the area of the size of Europe. Culture in the Sahel becomes a target for the Islamist group that are trying to ban music, film, literature, and visual art. Culture, in all aspects of art, media, and education, can be effective means to fight radicalization, in preventing the development of an extremist mentality, and creating a climate of tolerance, dialogue, and respect between people. The documentary film of Paul Chandler shows how artists use music as a means of resistance against terrorism while they strive for unity and peace, and increasing economical and political security, religious extremism, and globalization. Please join the webinar and discuss with the film director Paul Chandler, with experts of G5 Sahel, the Pan-African Film Festival of Ougadougou, and cultural activists on the impact of jihadism, climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic on cultural and film creation in the Sahel.
Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, hello and a warm welcome to an insightful discussion on desert blues, cultural activism in the Sahel region. My name is Rita Isiba. I'm delighted to have you and others tuning in from across the world via Zoom, Facebook Live to join the Culture Exchange Talk as part of Vienna's African Film Festival, FESPACO 2021. Since 1969, FESPACO is a Pan-African Film and Television Festival of Burkina Faso and promotes African culture and provides African actors, filmmakers, and technicians to showcase their talents and expertise in the international market. Over the next 4 days from today, May the 27th to May the 30th, you have the chance to watch a selection of African film productions streamed on the website thishumanworld.com. You'll find more information in the Zoom chat or on Facebook. Our mission for this meaningful dialogue is to help improve your understanding of the current affairs in the Sahel region and the use of cultural activism to mobilize peace and promote social justice. A great example is the opening film of this year's festival, It Must Be Peace, directed, starting with Paul Chandler. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Welcome. Aminata Ndiaye, Gender Advisor for the G5 Sahel Coalition. Welcome, Aminata.
Merci, bonjour.
François A, who is in charge of FESPACO in Burkina Faso. Welcome, François.
Merci, bonjour. Comment vous allez?
Great. Welcome. And last but not least, Alioune Ndiaye, playwright and director of film and theatre. Welcome, Alioune.
Bonsoir et merci de m'avoir invité.
Together with our panel, we'll explore for the next 90 minutes the current affairs of the Sahel region and how art, cinema, literature, and music provoke social political change, particularly in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Mauretania. I'd also like to mention that today's event is brought to you by the VIDC's Kultur in Bewegung in cooperation with This Human World, Octo TV, Radio Orange, the Austrian Development Agency, and of course, FESPACO of Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Now on to the serious part. In April this year, the sudden death of Chad's president, Idriss Déby, has raised concerns about the country's stability and the joint fight against militant terrorist groups. Why is this significant, you may ask? Chad is a major player in the G5 Sahel coalition, stabilizing the security within the Sahel region. Chadian military forces play a crucial role in fighting Islamist insurgents. And this brings me to my first question to Aminata. Aminata, you are a senior advisor for the G5 Sahel initiative. Can you briefly tell us more about the G5 Sahel and what the coalition does to support the society in the region and its infrastructure?
Merci beaucoup Rita. Donc je suis Aminata Ndiaye, je suis donc la responsable genre pour le G5 Sahel au niveau régional. On couvre les 5 pays du Sahel. Le G5 Sahel, c'est une organisation régionale qui couvre le Burkina Faso, le Mali, le Niger, le Tchad, la Mauretanie, pour se mettre ensemble au niveau régional pour lutter contre l'extrémisme violent et la radicalisation. Donc, nous travaillons sous l'égide des chefs d'État des 5 pays. On met des stratégies en place pour justement lutter ensemble contre la radicalisation et l'extrémisme violent. Mais nous ne sommes pas une organisation militaire comme on a tendance à le penser. Nous sommes avant tout une organisation de développement. Et ensuite, on lutte pour la sécurité. Donc, le G5 Sahel se met en avant pour mettre des programmes de développement, des programmes pour la paix. Et en support de ça, nous avons la force conjointe militaire pour assurer la paix. Donc, nous sommes basés à Nouakchott. Le secrétariat exécutif est basé à Nouakchott, mais nous travaillons en étroite collaboration avec les 5 pays. Donc, voilà.
Well, thank you very much. This brings me to a question I would like to ask Alioune. Non-violent protests such as cultural activism can be a powerful method to trigger change between states and citizens. Can you share with us your experience in using your art form to promote social political change?
Nous utilisons des mécanismes traditionnels qu'on appelle le koteba, le mana, qui est du récit, et on les amène sur des plateaux modernes et aussi en audiovisuel, surtout dans les programmes de télévision. Et nous partons du principe que aujourd'hui, ce qui manque dans nos sociétés, c'est l'information, pas la couverture de l'actualité, mais l'information du fonctionnement d'un pays, des institutions modernes. Il se trouve aujourd'hui que, si je prends le cas du Mali, il se trouve aujourd'hui que la plupart de la population malienne ne savent pas ce que c'est qu'un député. Quel pouvoir on donne à un député quand on vote pour lui? Ils ne savent pas ce que c'est qu'un conseil municipal. Ils ne savent pas ce que c'est qu'un président de la République. Ils savent que le président de la République existe, mais ils ne connaissent pas, en fait, ses vraies missions. Pour eux, le président de la République, c'est le Messie, c'est le prophète, et quand il est là, il est omnipotent, il peut régler toutes les questions. Et d'ailleurs, même quand un président de la République va inaugurer un investissement sur un territoire, on dit le président de la République nous a offert ces investissements ou ces infrastructures. Donc, le rapport aux institutions modernes de nos sociétés est très biaisé parce que nos sociétés vivent avec les formes de solidarité traditionnelles dans des institutions modernes. Et donc, le lien est difficilement applicable. Nous, qu'est-ce qu'on fait en tant que structure culturelle? Nous prenons en charge ces questions, ces enjeux, et nous les amenons dans nos créations, que ce soit au niveau des programmes de télévision, que ce soit au niveau des spectacles de théâtre, que nous appelons généralement les spectacles de côté bas. Et ces enjeux, nous essayons de faire que les questions les plus complexes, nous les prenons en charge pour les amener au niveau le plus bas en termes de compréhension de fonctionnement des institutions modernes. On parle, par exemple, des questions de fiscalité. Aujourd'hui, dans nos pays, on ne paye pas d'impôts parce que nos rapports aux impôts, ils datent des années coloniales. Et nos rapports, et donc les impôts, la première forme de résistance de nos pays au système colonial était de refuser de payer les impôts. Et ça continue aujourd'hui. Et dans une société moderne, quand on ne paye pas ses impôts, on ne donne pas les moyens à l'État moderne d'assurer le service public de base. On ne donne pas à nos États la possibilité de développer par eux-mêmes, de réinventer nos institutions modernes. C'est ce qu'on vit aujourd'hui et nous, on essaye de partir de la base, en tout cas de conscientiser de façon pédagogique avec des œuvres artistiques, avec des œuvres culturelles, avec des événements culturels pour sensibiliser la société sur ces enjeux modernes. Voilà un peu notre démarche et nous faisons de telle sorte que nos sociétés arrêtent de définir leur présent par le passé.
Well, thank you very much.
Ils apprennent à définir leur présent par le futur à construire ensemble. Merci.
Well, this brings me, thank you for your answer. It's very insightful how the art form can be used as one can call edutainment. So entertainment mixed with or merged with education. I believe that the documentary film, it must be made peace, is an instrument of cultural activism. Paul, I was wondering, this film, you gave a voice to artists in Mali. I also see it as a form of edutainment. What motivated you?
The thing that motivated me, I came to Mali in 2003 as an artist. I came to study music, play music, and teach music. I was introduced to Malian music in the United States. And it really made a big impression on me, and particularly the traditional instruments that accompany the modern traditional orchestras that tour, and so it was important to me that these traditions continue. I came to Mali, I guess, as an immigrant in lots of ways. And when you come somewhere from somewhere else, you notice and appreciate things that maybe aren't always appreciated by the people who live there. I can, for example, in the United States, immigrants have been coming here from Africa, and they've completely transformed communities here in the United States because they see opportunities. They appreciate things that are here that maybe we've kind of take for granted, and we've in lots of ways stopped appreciating and have kind of allowed them to fall apart in certain ways. And so that was a big part So we traveled around the country and we put a spotlight on these people and these instruments and these traditions, because they're really amazing, and they really are the source for music. You know, almost any kind of music. We can say they're the source for, you know, all the people, all the ambassadors, the Mali ambassadors that tour the world and play their music and have kind of modernized their music, have made it more contemporary. This traditional music is really the source of all of that. It's the inspiration, but not only the source of modern contemporary Malian music, but blues and jazz and so many genres that we have here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Now, this actually leads me to my next question that I would like to ask François. In the festival's opening film, It Must Be Made Peace, one of the artists mentioned that without compassion and cooperation, we are lost. All artists agree that music and festivals bring joy and happiness and peace. Can you tell us more about FESPACO in Ouagadougou and the purpose of hosting a mini version in Vienna?
Bien, merci. Vous m'entendez? C'est bon, vous m'entendez? Alors,
oui.
Alors, ok, bien, merci. Il faut dire que aujourd'hui, au Burkina Faso, effectivement, il y a eu, en raison de la Covid, plusieurs situations parce que le FESPACO, qui est donc le Festival panafricain du cinéma et de la télévision de Ouagadougou, a été reporté. Il n'a pas été annulé parce qu'initialement, c'était au mois de février. Il a été reporté au mois d'octobre. Donc, c'est du 16 au 23 octobre 2021. Mais de manière générale, l'environnement culturel, que ce soit au niveau de la musique ou de la danse, ou du théâtre, ou du cinéma, beaucoup de choses se sont passées. Alors, pour améliorer justement la vie de nos compatriotes, alors, il y a eu donc des activités qui sont poursuivies. En 2020, par exemple, vous avez les Récréatrales, qui sont donc un festival de théâtre, qui s'est tenu au mois d'octobre 2020. Et c'était dans un quartier populaire qui a connu justement la participation de beaucoup de personnes. Alors, vous avez aussi le Festival des identités culturelles qui a donc aussi rassemblé un certain nombre de personnes. Et donc, vous avez aussi des événements comme les Soutigi Awards, vous avez des événements comme, il y a eu des concerts qui sont tenus, pour justement permettre à ce que la population puisse toujours vivre. Et c'était donc une forme de résilience face donc à cette Covid-là. Et bien entendu également aussi, c'était aussi une manière de s'affirmer contre tout ce qu'il y a comme attaque terroriste, parce que vous savez aussi que notre pays en souffre. Alors, donc pour dire que les populations ont bénéficié justement de ces programmes-là.
Suffered and has been suffering from. So these festivals, with the participation of many people, is trying to help with these activities. So when we go to a festival, there are also people who sell produce, so where people can buy something to eat or to drink, and this also helps the people who live there. But there's also cineasts, cinema lovers who follow movies, several movies which have also a lot of value and who are offered to the people through the television channels and allows us to watch different movies. And so these are the people which have happened in order to better the lives of people in spite of the difficult situation. And the fact that lots of activities could not be carried out. And this also helps some people to make a little bit of money. And it also helps the musicians, the artists who don't have a lot of work anymore, helps them financially in order to get them through the pandemic. I believe that we have not really been too badly off with the pandemic because we could carry out these events and thus help the population, give them something to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Talking about enjoyment, I would like to ask Alioune, can cultural workers be a voice for peace, or will they remain unheard under the noise of guns? What do you think, Alioune?
In general, here in Mali, since 2012, the artists were very committed to help with their music. Many artists have created music, organized events, tried to raise awareness in the population and act in such a way so that people do not suffer too much from the crisis. And this has been really good support. And in Bamako, Bamako is a place. How to explain this? This is really where the people from Bamako come to get healed. But in contrast to Burkina Faso, Mali had to cancel many of these activities. In where I live and in my cultural space since March 2020, we programmed many events, and we're continuing to use the arts networks, television, in order to propose activities and help Mali population, the society of Mali. Now, today, for example, we are in a crisis. Unfortunately, the video froze. And it's the artists who are the avant-garde today, if I may say so, the avant-garde in Mali. Artists are really at the forefront of social events, but they also work a lot so that the people in Mali do suffer less from the traumatism which it has been suffering from since 2012.
Thank you very much, Alioune. We see that artists are healers and ease the pain of conflict. I would like to ask François, what are the consequences of not being able to host festivals and cultural exchange programs? How does this affect artists, filmmakers, and the society as a whole?
It's a catastrophe in Mali, economically speaking, and on a human level also. It's really bad.
That question was actually for François.
Désolé.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
No worries.
Je peux avoir la question?
Yes, can I hear the question again, please?
Sure. I was wondering what the consequences of not being able to host festivals and cultural exchange programs. As Alioune just explained to us, the artists heal the wounds that the conflict brings. So how does this affect artists, filmmakers, and society as a whole?
Oui, c'est vrai que effectivement.
It's true. When culture is perceived as therapy as a means of providing cultural identity, showing cultural identity, and they can't take place. So this is obviously a big, big problem. But I think regarding Burkina Faso, there was not the same situation. About 20% of cultural activities were cancelled because they were about to take place at the peak of the COVID situation. So most events could be carried out. We also had a festival close to Ouagadougou, place Kukugug, a festival, an open air festival where 200, 300 people came. Of course, it's very difficult to go to Ouagadougou these days, and there has been, however, alternatives mean of transport which developed. I say we must watch television, we must use all those means, but there is no digital platform actually to tell people. And this situation really affected people who could not go to the festivals. And there are actually some digital platforms where some cultural activities take place. And this has actually allowed the population to participate, so to speak. In order to conclude, let me say that the COVID crisis has forced the people of Burkina Faso to deal with the new situation. When you look at Kukudok, for example, on the internet, you can see these events in live. But before, you had to go there by traveling there. This has changed. So the digital instruments are used in a positive way in order to deal with the COVID situation, in order to allow people to see the activities which take place at festivals or other cultural events. And this is actually good for FESPACO. And this new way of seeing festivals in a digital manner is something which obviously helps us a lot and can be carried out even if the public's not physically there.
Thank you very much, François, for your insights. Aminata, we heard the benefits of what COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the society as a whole. However, we do know that the pandemic has also affected a lot of people, particularly the informal economy. I also know that women and girls are suffering immensely during the pandemic. How do governments cope with the effects of these threats on women and girls and also the society or also the informal economy?
Thank you, Rita. Women and girls are vulnerable population before COVID-19 and before everything. Donc, avant toute chose, les femmes et les filles représentent en fait la couche la plus vulnérable de la population.
These are the most vulnerable parts of a society. When there is an additional crisis, they are twice as much affected by it. Now, the crisis finds them in a very difficult situation in their communities. There are studies which have already been carried out and which actually go to show the consequences of this crisis and show that these are very much worse in several aspects regarding violence, much worse for women and children. Economically speaking, as well, we know that women are the biggest percentage in formal training, and the informal sector has been very badly hit. There are many governments who have taken measures. Measures have been taken in order to support the economy in general, but also to support women who are much more vulnerable. But these activities have often helped women who are entrepreneurs, who are registered, but women in the informal sector are very difficult to reach. And very often the government does not help them. This is what we have been working on in order to act so that everybody can benefit from this support in the Sahel zone. And G5 is a regional organization which covers these 5 countries. And we're trying to act on a regional level in order to learn the lessons and apply them from other countries in order to be able to share these strategies. And we're also trying to help the countries to reach the most vulnerable groups. Thank you very much.
Talking about vulnerable groups, I would like to ask Paul, what has been your observations on the national and local actors in the Sahel that could make potentially a valuable contribution to conflict resolution? Who, in your opinion, must be involved in peacemaking?
Thank you, good question. In fact, the majority of our activities take place in the rural communes of Mali, the rural districts. We sponsor, produce cultural activities, intercommunal cultural activities in the various regions of Mali, Timbuktu, Gao, Mopti, Ségou. The majority of our activities actually take place in rural Mali. And the objective of these events really is to bring together diverse communities, bring them together, give them a context to come together. The main context for them coming together is culture, but that's not the only thing that happens. Once you bring people together, we facilitate spaces for dialogue. As Alioune said, the civics aspect, civics training, counter-violent extremism training, explaining how these things work, how people are being manipulated by extremism, and how government works are really crucial. The culture is a very important context to bring these communities together. And so that's a really important focus, because when you have the level of insecurity that is happening, particularly in rural communes, people tend to stay in their neighborhoods, tend to stay in their corners. And it's, in that kind of situation, it's very easy to blame somebody else for what's happening. It's very easy to blame your neighbor for what's happening when in fact, the problem is being orchestrated or manipulated by external elements, and not the neighbor. So it's important that everyone can agree on music, everyone can agree on culture, and even if it's not, even if an artist isn't maybe singing in the language, in your first language, there's a thread that connects almost all of Malian culture, and so people can really come together around that. And once people are together, they can begin to talk and they begin to strategize. And artists are really a key element to that. The artists are so important, as Alioune said. They, in terms of educating people, bringing people together, reminding people of traditional values, reminding people of really what's important. And the music, the energy around it really breaks down barriers, and it allows people to kind of a restart and a re-dialogue. And through that, they discover that they're more powerful together. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Aminata, we just heard from Alioune and François and also from Paul that the cultural worker, so by that I mean artists, filmmakers, actors, musicians, they all play a crucial role when it comes to conflict resolution. In your opinion, what other actors must be involved in peacemaking?
Vous savez, Rita, je pense que...
Well, Rita, you know, promoting peace is really a task for everybody. So whenever you have strategies in place or try to set up strategies to bring peace back, inclusivity, pluralism are two extremely important concepts. No part of the population shall be left on the roadside. Everyone has a responsibility, has a life circle and life circumstances allowing him or her to build peace. And these things, if you're missing and lacking on inclusivity, then it is actually a factor that is striving conflict, and it will never lead you to peace. This is why we work at including the local population, the youth, the women, taking into account religious and ethnic diversity, but not only recognizing this pluralism, it is important to have a good dialogue. So an initiative like the one today is extremely important because G5 Sahel with cultural actors is already very good, very fructuous, and allowing us to really build bridges. And we don't do it enough. And we have a lot of cultural actors that really have an important role to play. And for instance, we had a forum in Bamako, important forum, and we are very much interested in that type of dialogue because confidence is and trust is very important. Otherwise, you can't build a society. Recognizing this needs to be supported by the state and its authorities. They are in charge of norms. They need to defend the citizenship rights and also a good repartition of resources, guaranteeing peace. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aminata. Alioune, we heard from Aminata that nobody should be left behind. We also heard that trust is a major factor when it comes to your government. I know that through the Wele Wele political movement, you mobilize young people to run for political office. Can you share with us a defining moment of the Malian youth making a positive impact?
Oui, en fait, nous, on a vécu une expérience extraordinaire parce qu'au Mali...
Yes, absolutely. We had an incredible experience. 25% is the average turnout of participation at elections. In a country that calls themselves democratic, so that's incredibly low. So these are huge borders and limits. Because there's defiance, and defiance to modern institutions that try to represent the interests of society. And we said we need to have 80% of young people we have 80% of the population under 40, 70% under 30, and they are not taken into account and not into the promotion of the values of democracy. They cannot define their present through the past or the future to be built. So the Malian society is in religious cults and ethnic cults, and I do understand, because this is the space where you can meet people. You have at about 11,000 mosques in Mali. It's incredibly high number. And you have 3, 4 libraries and 10 cultural spaces or so. So we said, how can we ease this access to culture? Open up society so that they understand modern institutions. And we have a project, the happiness on the roadside, it is called. And they are going with movies, theater plays, different citizenship integration acts, and also finding new solidarity forms, social security aspects, and how can I say, insurances and so on. And this is something that is really, really missing. And by doing so, we are trying to motivate the youth so as to take charge of the future of the society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Alioune. For youth to take charge in order to prepare themselves for the future. I think that's something that's not just affecting the Sahel region or the whole of Africa, actually affects almost the whole of the world. I was also, judging from what you just said, it brought me to another thought. The youth are very often disconnected to politics, but quite often the youth are also disconnected to traditions and customs. And this brings me to a question to François. How do you present the cultural identity of the homeland through festivals? How do you attract it to the youth, should I say? This question is for François.
Bien, merci.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think that for cultural programs and festivals, the first thing to do is to be a space where you can promote identity, culture, and openness. And this is done through the proper selection of movies to be shown, because they very often, when you have script writers or writers at large or screenplay writers, they start from a fictional story, and then they integrate real life elements. And this is a process that allows you to show some perspectives. So while selecting and doing it carefully, you can convey messages, and you can, we had a festival, as I said, in November 2020, we had a festival in Bamako about cultural identity. And by selecting the appropriate movies, we are trying to show and strengthen the identity. And we see, and this allows us as well to present cultures that are a little bit forgotten, because people do not return back home to their home villages, to their home regions. So it's through the movies that the young urban generation can keep in contact, and creating that dimension, and they've done it extremely well. You had Tintou and different movies that do that in an excellent manner, and that allows us to include the youth. And if you have difficulties attracting youth, then it's useless, basically, because it is about this work on programs, on movies, on music. And what we do is that usually we have a presentation of the movie, Q&A afterwards, and we have one on Kasena culture or other programs. And very often we can even interest the youngsters to think about working in the cultural sphere, be it movies or other things. And it needs to be done in an informal setting, because we have, of course, movie schools where you know where you get taught on how to be a good script writer, actor, whatever. And those who want then to take up these professions can actually be attracted through the festivals, where we then always make reference to the national schools. Of course, professional aspect is one thing, but then it needs to be a popular culture. You need to be able to produce yourself in front of an audience. And most of the time, or during these last months, it was difficult to have live shows, be it music, be it theater, whatever. And we had the attack on a city, in the city center, and just opposite of the Hotel Splendid. And since then, we decided actually to build a musical arena right there, so as to attract cultural activities, and also to allow us to say, no, we will not stop, you know, and we will not get intimidated by these terrorist activities. And this is something we try to do through movies, music, and theater. And it's music, and in that specific occasion is mostly music, traditional music, and modern music of Mali. And we also have in FESPACO this, but it's not the only place. And we actually try to use the sensibilization of and empowerment of the youth, so as to be able to strengthen their citizenship empowerment. And I really hope that for the next FESPACO, we will have a bigger audience, and by growing our audience, we will have a greater impact and be able to change things for the better. And the youth in general is picking up on the topics we show and we deal with. I actually spoke about internet, and the youngsters use more and more internet in Mali too, and they see many bad things and many bad content, and therefore we need to have a counterweight for that. And yeah, that's what we're trying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, François. This brings me on to a question that I'd like to pose to Paul. François mentioned how important it is for youth to also pick up the profession in the art, and also how crucial it is not to be afraid following an attack. Life must go on. And this reminds me of one of the Sigi dancers in the film It Must Be Made Peace. One of them mentioned that it takes courage to be a musician. Can you relate? What was the lesson you took away from the story told by each artist?
Yeah, that particular piece is about Finko Walama. Finko Walama says that he's in the cultural region of Wasalu. And he's talking about how it's not easy. It does take a lot of courage to be an artist. Learning an instrument is not easy. It takes concentration, it takes strength, it takes commitment. These people are in this case, Finko was a farmer, and he works very hard cultivating the land, and then after doing all that work, he also has this other responsibility as an artist. And as I said, since about 2015, we've been doing cultural events in the what we can say the conflict zone or the red zone or the in Mali, over 100 different events, and all those events have been accompanied by artists. And I think if you're based in Bamako, there's a lot of fear to travel or to go to the north of the country. People have this impression that there's only instability, but the Malian artists have been from all over the country, have been very courageous and have made their way to help a lot of the isolated communities and share their gifts, share their music, share their message, empower the people there to, it's very empowering when you have, in the film, you have Master Sumi, you have Milmo, for example, two young hip hop artists who are based in Bamako who have accompanied us in these projects all throughout the country, Timbuktu, Gao, places that a lot of people are really afraid of going. And it's really changed people's perceptions and allowed even more cultural exchange. And that's what's really important. I don't know if you live in Mali, if you travel around in Mali, you know how difficult it is. The roads between the major cities there's a real lack of security. They're falling apart in lots of places. And it's very difficult for young people to move around the country and interact with other young people in different places. But these artists have showed a lot of courage, not just in producing their art, having a message and sharing that message, but also going into situations that are really quite dangerous, risking their lives to show their solidarity with youth in different places of the country. I just wanted to add something about the film It Must Make Peace. It was made for a local audience, and so it's in 5 local languages, and that was the point. So this film moves around the country, and it bridges youth culture with traditional culture. And I appreciate that it's being shown in this particular venue. It's really special. And the original focus for the film was to be shared with local youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for creating such a great visual movie. The cinematography and the message behind this movie is fabulous. I think it's also a great soft power for Mali as well.
Yeah. May I add something? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Please, Paul, please.
I mean, I'm the face. I'm the person here today talking to you, but in Mali, I have a team of about 12 young people from across West Africa, from Mali mostly, but also from Burkina Faso and also from Cote d'Ivoire. And so, they are a huge part of all of this. They're the majority of the work that gets done. They're the ones doing it. So, and I also want to just add that one of our engineers, sound engineers, is from Burkina Faso, and he is incredibly well trained and participated in the sound for film training in Burkina Faso. So just want to thank the gentleman from Burkina Faso, because it's really extraordinary, the technical training that some of these youth have gotten, from there. And we're trying to also do the same thing in Mali. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah.
I really appreciate also that you have illustrated that there's so much talent that is perhaps being wasted, if I may say. I would like to link this to a question I'd like to ask Aminata. Paul mentioned how these artists empower various remote villages and societies across the country in Mali. I was wondering if you can share with us a success story on women applying cultural activism for social justice or social change, any sort of program that the G5 Sahel has pushed forward.
Thank you, Rita. En continuité avec ce que François vient de nous dire et ce que Paul...
Now, after what François has told us, I would also like to underline the importance of young people in the fight against extremism, but also in order to reach peace again in the Sahel region. I think it's time today that we stop to believe that the young people are victims or even a weight on us, because they are at the core of the process. We must give them a role, because we're still in victimization. We always believe that young people are a problem category, but they have the potential. African youth, not only because they're so numerous and they're getting more numerous, but we must remember the value that they represent. I'm talking about exchanges, about culture, about everything. And we must use this huge potential in order to reach more development, in order to reach peace. And in the Sahel zone, we are developing a youth strategy. And I believe that cultural activities must be a very important part of this. And with the International Organization for the French Language, we must also give a voice to them in order to provide a dialogue. I was very touched when I saw in the film the speaker actually said that the musicians are really are going to lose their income. And so there must be an intergenerational link, because the culture must be kept by young people, but also by the older generation. And we must actually, they must be able to rely on the older generation. Now, I'd like to answer your question with a plead, a wish. Even if we look for something, we might not find a coherent way of providing a repertoire of what is going on. It's usually in the informal sector. Now, the support of activists and musicians in the peacemaking process is very valuable, but it's not estimated at the value that it has. It doesn't have a place in there, and it's not done in a formal way in order for us to be able to rely on national strategy. The G5 has strategies against violence and for resolution, for conflict resolution. There are things that exist, but we must put culture at the core of this issue and also help by providing also the informal sector with a real strategy. And this goes for financing as well, because with a strategy, we can find finances as well. And this is very important in the fight against extremism. There are certain strategies to be used. Militarization of development is what we call it, but the military plays an important role. We cannot deny this, but culture also plays an extremely important role, which we must also valorize in order for culture to be able to help society. Thank you very much.
I would still like to stick to what I would like to hear from you, Aminata, which is what is the role of women in the peace process? According, and I would like to know this from your perspective as a G5 advisor, G5 gender advisor.
Yes. Notre rôle aujourd'hui, c'est de plus en plus amener les femmes à...
Our role is to make sure that women are also seated at the negotiation table. We know that women play an important role in peace construction. It's informal, but women are the bosses in families, and they play an important role for social cohesion. So their role has never been denied. But now, when we're talking about them sitting down on the negotiation table for the construction of peace, we are not giving them the value that they have. Still not. What we're trying to do in the G5 Sahel is to, first of all, make people understand the role of women, but also to be able to talk about women's issue, which are very specific because in the conflicts, resolution 28 was recognizes for the first time that the crisis and situation conflicts do touch women more severely than men. This is very important. Now, Resolution 1325 recognizes that women are a part of the solution. We must not neglect this, but the problem is the implementation of this resolution in the peace plan of these countries. Yeah, most countries have peace plans in order to implement Resolution 1325, in order to have more women part of the negotiation table. And there are lots of women who are mediator. There are not enough still. We're still pleading in order to have more women in these circles. And this is a fight which we're continuing to fight. On the G5, we have the regional women's platform of the Sahel region, which is also a plaidoyer in order to help people be part of it, to cooperate with the individual and several organizations in order to be able to have them be part of decision making. Now, the resolution 1325 is 20 years old, but we're still continuing with the same issues. The underrepresentation of women in the decision making circles even if we know that women play an essential role in conflict resolution. Now, this resolution is a very important program for the inclusion of women. And we are cooperating with the security forces and other forces. But in these defense and security circles, the presence of women is minimal, although it has been shown that military women helps to provide more value and provide more trust to the population. So women in uniform provide more of the trust. People will address them more freely and talk to them. So military women, the presence of military women is an efficient strategy in the military troops. And in spite of this recognition, there are still not enough women in the military forces and the defense forces. Women are not sufficiently integrated in those defense forces. And this is a program that we're trying to implement in the G5, also in cooperation with the UN forces, in order to have more women peacemakers in the fight against violent extremism and in the construction of peace.
Thank you very much for elaborating on my question. I really appreciate that. Very insightful. We've reached the Q&A session now. Before we get some answers from our distinguished panel, I'd like to remind you to complete a brief survey. It should not take you longer than a minute or two. And it does help us improve and design global dialogues such as this one to your liking. Now, you'll find the link in the chat function. That being said, let's get on with the Q&A. I'll just have a look at what questions have been asked. If you just bear with me, I'm just clicking within the function. I've got one that I've asked already, which is more comments about women's activities in the role for peace. Now, I can perhaps extend this question to Alioune. Alioune, you can perhaps let us know how you integrate women in any cultural activities that you produce.
Et déjà, les femmes sont la place de la
women are very important when it comes to training. We have a program called Mousseau Academy. Mousseau Academia helped us to start identifying lots of young women, which we have trained, because in Mali, the women are traditionally not allowed to play the traditional instruments. So we have identified women, we have trained them for 2 years in practicing traditional instruments. We have also tried to identify and find out about women to do this. Now, today, there are 2 young women after 1 year who are considered the very good players. And there's another program also which is inspired by the band girls bands in Europe and other areas. And in Bamako, we have created such an event with electronic music in order to find out about the traditional musical heritage of Mali. And thus, important messages can be transported to the people of Mali. Now, these programs have existed for 2 years now. And about 40 young women are included in those programs.
Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you give us any examples, François, how you include or use women to promote cultural products at your festivals, perhaps?
Oui, voilà. En fait, nous, au-delà même du FESPACO, nous avons une manifestation.
Now, actually, not only FESPACO, but we also have other programs. There is a film, for example, based on the production of women. And at the beginning, this was an activity which was carried out by women film directors. But there are lots of women in front of the camera, and lots of women also act as technicians. And so we have tried to integrate them, and this way also to approach women and put women also in front of the cameras. So they are given a context, a role in order to provide a showcase for these women to show that they actually can contribute to society. And this was actually also an event which, next to FESPACO, has done this. But there has also been a cooperation with other festivals dedicated to women. You know, there's the Saleh Festival in Morocco, which is a festival which is dedicated to women. But also in Dakar, in Senegal, there's such a festival featuring women, and other festivals. And so we have a network of these festivals which actually help us to showcase women, to ask questions about women, to talk about women's issue, and join forces with women in order to make progress. But this is very important. But there are other programs, specific programs for women within the framework of FESPACO, decorators. But there's also lots of workshops in order to show the talent of women. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's, for me, very inspiring to learn that in Mali and in the regions in the Sahel, that women are able to contribute instrumentally to peacemaking. Clearly, it's possible. Paul, I was also wondering, from your perspective, what do you think about the possibility of a link between tackling climate change and culture? Is there a link? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, a lot of our events feature musicians that are also in the traditional economy. They are fishermen, or they are herders, or they are farmers. And all these people live very, very close to the land. And they're a very important reference for what is happening in Mali. We partner with several hunters festivals, for example, and the hunters are the ones who really know, for example, what is happening with wildlife. In Mali, we have very good hunters, and there's, I think the levels of wildlife have really decreased, but these people also have a real potential for turning that around. In the film, It Must Make Peace, there's a Mamu Chiro who is a Somono, that's a traditional fisherman, and they live very close. They live from the river. From the health of the river is critical to their survival. Malian farmers, rain is critical to their survival. There's not In the United States, we have big center pivot irrigation, but in Mali, it's mostly dry land farming, and their survival depends on rain. And all of these different there's an immense amount of culture and tradition and knowledge connected to these different jobs that people do. And so it's their input and their participation, their knowledge is vital to understanding really, to understanding what's happening in terms of the environment. It must make peace. You see the marionettes, for example, from Markala, and you see the fish. And so traditional communities represent their work through art in their cultural manifestations, and they have a lot to say about climate change and about the environment, and they're a wealth of knowledge and really need to be more included. Definitely. Things tend to be very centralized. You know, there's a lot going on in Bamako, for example, and it's a huge country. And so the more that these people can be involved in the dialogue around security, around the environment, the traditional wisdom, I think the more effective all these initiatives will be. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Paul. I've got another question from the audience. This one is a question that probably applies to you all. How do the events of the last few days affect the population in Mali? And what does it take in Mali now to achieve peace and stability? Who would like to answer this question?
Bon, comme je vis ça dans ma chair, je peux.
Well, I can actually tell you a little bit about this because I'm confronted with this. Mali is actually undergoing very traumatic period, and there's no more trust. Trust has been destroyed. There are not many references, and the fact that we have not been able to sufficiently promote modern values have it that today, in the look and the search for something important, though there's been lots of wrong decisions which have been made. Now the institutions of the country are not able to integrate the fact that they are here to represent people. Now these are issues which are very important, and this is why today there is no momentum which has the institutions to reply, to answer these important challenges. Because we do not have the possibility anymore to project into the future. I am from Bamako, and for a couple, I cannot tell you what I will be doing tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And this is the case for most people in Mali, and it's a trauma. It's very stressful. And what I have just said is just a weak way of defining what we're going through in Mali today.
Thank you very much for your answer. We are aware that it's been very tough on the people in the Sahel region over the last few years, and most recently as well. It will be really great to know what we can all do for you in different parts of the world. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time for this great conversation. If this discussion resonated with you, stay tuned for future events brought to you by the VIDC. Over the next 4 days from today, May the 27th to May the 30th, you have a chance to watch a selection of African film productions on this humanworld.com. with a focus on African cultural activistic activities, if I can say so. A big thank you to our guests today. Aminata, thank you. Paul, François, and Alioune. I wish you great luck in your endeavors. Wherever you are, I hope today's speakers have inspired you to collaborate and promote activities that advance Africa and its global partnership with the world. We live in exciting times. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rita Isiba. Be safe and auf Wiedersehen.